You're watching PowerNation. Today on Carcass, we have our two-door Tahoe in the shop ready for some major upgrades. We'll install a new drivetrain that gives us better reliability.
We'll ditch the stock suspension and replace it with something to change the stance. We also beef up our braking system. Hey everybody, welcome to Carcass. As you can see behind me, this is the Tahoe that we have worked on before. Now we have it back in here to do some more stuff to it. And while it has served its purpose, we pulled out the old powertrain because it's seen a lot of miles, and now it is time for an upgrade.
And that upgrade starts with a crate engine. This is a 390 horsepower, 350 cubic inch small block Chevrolet that we got from ATK Performance Engines. Not only does this thing make 390 horsepower, but it also boasts a whopping 420 pound-feet of torque, and that's thanks to its 10-to-1 compression and its ATK high-performance aluminum cylinder heads. Down inside the engine, you'll find hyper-eutectic flat-top pistons, a dual-roller timing chain, and billet aluminum roller rockers with a 1.6 ratio. Now you can get an engine just like this from ATK, fully assembled all the way from the oil pan up to the air cleaner, including the carburetor. We just chose to order our engine this way because we are not going to be putting a carbureted engine inside a vehicle that was originally fuel injected. We are going to be running some fuel injection, but it's not the stock stuff. We are going to be doing an upgrade there as well. Now to get moving forward with that, I got to remove a couple parts from this engine first.
The injection system we're going with is Edelbrock's Pro-Flo 4 EFI kit, which they offer in 450 and 550 horsepower versions for the small block Chevy. We have the 450 horsepower version, which includes 29 pound-per-hour injectors installed in a 4150 style intake manifold. Depending on whether you have Vortec heads or traditional heads, they have something for your application. They also include a completely labeled plug-and-play harness with a brand new ECU with a faster processor and a single connection distributor to make this a very complete kit. They also include a bunch of other stuff: spark plug wires, ignition coil, and a ton of fuel system components to make this an extremely simple and straightforward installation. What I have to do now is just get some RTV and gaskets down, and then we can go ahead and put on this intake manifold. All right, let's drop it on in here. That's good right there.
It's always scary with aluminum cylinder heads. Definitely want to make sure you got long enough bolts. The motor mounts on it now. Kind of coming at this a little crooked, but
yeah, we'll get it. Get in there.
Try to put the damper bolt right over the hood latch. It should be somewhat centered. Leaking coolant.
Go forward. Oh, I just moved that hose.
That's fine. It's not like the system's completely drained. We'll clean it up.
And go forward. Go down a little more.
Scariest thing is when I can't see. I just have to trust.
All right, stop. Forward.
And the pedal movement, like just a little.
All right, down slowly. Go ahead down.
Just a touch. It's nice to put a small block in something that you took a small block out of. Mm-hmm. Just easy work here.
Yeah, no fussing around with it.
Right. Now that we have the engine installed in the Tahoe, we get to show you what's in the box. Hey everybody, welcome back. Well, we have the engine installed in between the frame rails of the Tahoe, and now it's time to work on the transmission. This right here is a 4L60E level 4 transmission that was built by Gearstar Transmissions. This thing is capable of holding up to 650 horsepower and about 600 pound-feet of torque. You guys are probably noticing something a little different about this transmission, but we're not gonna let the cat out of the bag yet. First, we're gonna get this on the transmission jack, get it up in the truck, and get it installed. Get this thing up there. Ready?
Yep.
That was sitting on there, okay. Now you guys are probably wondering by now, why in the world do we have a 2-wheel drive transmission and yet the truck is 4-wheel drive? Well, the cat is out of the bag. We are gonna be swapping this truck over to a 2-wheel drive truck. Now, why are we doing that? A couple of reasons here. The 2-door, 2-wheel drive Tahoes are extremely hard to find, and when you do find them, you really have to pay up for them. So we went the cheaper route here, and we bought a 4-wheel drive truck, and then we're gonna convert it to 2-wheel drive. Well, for you 4-wheel drive guys, you're probably asking yourself, why in the world would you wanna do that? And it's pretty simple. As far as performance goes, that's what Jimmy and I are into. We like building performance stuff that hits the street, stuff that goes out on the track. And that's basically what this is going to be. So by the time we get this 2-wheel drive 4L60 paired up with our spicy little small block here, this thing should be a blast to drive. And we'll get it out on the street. Before we can get the transmission installed, loosen up the bolts for the cross member, and just slide it out of the way. Now, one more thing, since this is an automatic, we did pair the converter with our cam specs. So we have a yank converter in here. It's a 2800 stall converter, and that'll pair nicely with our ATK. Now that we have the engine and transmission mocked up in our Tahoe, let's go over something that's actually pretty important, and that's engine angle. In older cars and trucks with V8s, they actually had quite a bit of angle built into the way that the engine was installed in the car. And the way that they kind of compensated for that on the fuel side of things, so on the intake manifold, they would machine this surface with a little bit of an angle so it would actually set your carburetor perfectly flat. They did that to kind of help with fuel delivery and to keep the levels inside your carburetor perfectly even or level to the ground. Now with our setup, the fact that we are going from a 4-wheel drive truck to a 2-wheel drive truck with a different transmission, the cross member in our truck is allowing our engine to tilt back entirely too far. So to compensate for that, I've got this little piece of steel here and this magnetic protractor on here. And the angle that this is showing is just over 6 degrees, which is entirely too much. So underneath here, I have a jack with a block of wood on the transmission pan. We're gonna go ahead and jack that up until we reach 0. And then I'll crawl underneath the truck. I will take a measurement between the cross member and the transmission mount. We'll end up having to build a little bit of a spacer there. And we will call this thing completely installed. There's 0 right there. All right, so it looks like we're about 3 3/4 inches, so we'll go ahead, whip up a couple plates, build them out, and we will wrap up the install. Coming up, now that the Tahoe is 2-wheel drive, we do a little mixing and matching with some parts to get this thing sitting a little bit lower. Hey guys, welcome back. Well, now that we have the engine and transmission installed in the Tahoe, it's time to start moving on to some other things like the suspension. With this thing being 2-wheel drive, now we want this to sit rather low to the ground, so we're gonna start working up here. To do that, the first thing I do need to do is get rid of all of the tension on the torsion bar. Now, what we're going to be using here is actually a torsion bar clamp. What this does is helps you put a little more tension on the key itself so you can get the keeper out of the way. You can pick this up at your local auto parts store, and you can, most of the time, just rent them. So. All right, so now that we have all the tension off of everything up here, we can start taking all this apart. Nope. 22. All right, well, let's talk about what we're trying to accomplish on the front of our Tahoe. We're gonna be trying to do 2 things. One of those is to do a brake upgrade, and the second thing is to try to get the Tahoe to sit as low as possible. So the first thing we're gonna be doing is a spindle swap. This is the spindle out of our GMT 400 chassis. This is a spindle out of a GMT 800 chassis. This is the 99-06 trucks. Now you guys can see here that basically the hub mounting location is almost the same. This one sits a little bit higher, and that's actually going to lower the truck just a little bit. This is not a direct bolt-in application. We do need to do a little bit of work to this. We have to do a little bit of machine work back here so we can get the lower ball joint to engage in this. Then we also have to ream the upper ball joint to get our stock ball joint of our Tahoe to work with this as well. Now let's talk about how we're gonna lower the truck. We're gonna just be replacing the original keys that we took out of this truck with a set of lowering keys. And what that does is basically just reclocks this hexagon that's in here and allows this to relax out a little bit more, and that will lower the truck as well. The other reason why we're gonna be going with this style of spindle is to do a brake upgrade. Now the GMT 800 trucks have a bigger set of brakes, so by going with this spindle, we'll be able to bolt the stock brakes directly onto it. We'll have a performance upgrade and a brake upgrade as well. So I have to do a little bit of machine work to the spindle, so let's just get at it. Don't be afraid of machining this part of the spindle out. This is actually an aftermarket spindle that we picked up from Summit Racing. This is a 2-inch drop spindle, and there's plenty of meat here, or plenty of steel. So by taking this little bit out of here, it won't hurt at all. The reamer that we're using is from Summit Racing as well. This is a 2-inch per foot reamer, and take your time while you're doing this. Check your work often just to make sure you don't go too far. One thing I did have to do on the truck side, I did have to grind a little bit on this ball joint socket. Really, all I did was take this little casting rib off of it all the way around and smooth it out. So this kind of falls right in here. Get the nuts on the ball joints and keep moving on. Okay, so the last thing we're gonna do on the install, you have to take your tie rod end, flip it over, and then lock it into place. Now from here to do the brakes, we're gonna be using a GMT 800 hub and caliper assembly.
Stick around. We add the new suspension to our rear end and upgrade our brake components. Now that Jeremy's got the front suspension all done, it's time to move on to the back. This is gonna be quite a bit more simple. We're just gonna do a simple leaf spring change. It'll give us a little bit of a drop, but we don't want too much because we don't want to get into the chassis and have to notch. So this is just a quick and easy way to finish the look of our truck. With the axle supported, I'll loosen the U-bolts and then remove the U-bolt plate. And I'll follow that up by removing the shackle bolts. To do the lowering for us, like I said, we're going with a leaf spring. This is a Belltech leaf spring that we got from Summit Racing. The drop is about 3 inches, so it's nothing too drastic, but definitely enough to change the stance. All right, so we're just using that top plate from the original leaf springs, and we will use the stock U-bolts, just clean the rust off them a little bit, and then we'll get this thing tightened up in here. Not gonna go fully tight here. We'll wait till the truck is on the ground, and then we'll finally torque everything.
Now, since we switched over to the GMT 800 platform and hub, we need to do something about the brakes. So to complete everything up here, we're going to be using a complete kit that we got from PowerStop Brakes. For the rotors, we're going to be going with their Evolution series. Now these are cross-drilled and slotted, plus they have a zinc coating all the way around them, so they'll be able to withstand anything Mother Nature can throw at them. And we want to make sure that we put the right side on the correct side. Now the pads in the kit are their Z23 carbon fiber ceramic performance pads. These have a low dust formula and are thermo-scorched for faster braking times. To round off the kit, we will be installing the caliper that they sent as well. Again, this is for the GMT 800 platform. Now when you take a brake job this far, you definitely want to make sure you replace your hoses. So we'll get this one on here and tackle the driver's side as well. But that's all the time that we have today. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you guys next time.